Imagine a small country overcoming major challenges to become a global hub for innovation. This is Israel, the startup nation. Despite limited resources and a complex environment, Israeli entrepreneurs have built world-changing companies in cybersecurity, AI, agriculture, and biotech. The same spirit of resilience inspired the launch of LatinTech Pitch in 2022. Created by the Consulate General of Israel in Houston and supported by nonprofit partners, this initiative celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month by connecting Latino founders with experienced Israeli mentors. Over 6 months of hands-on guidance, participants can gain invaluable insights into what it takes to build and scale a startup in today's competitive tech world. Despite being one of the fastest growing forces in business creation, Latino entrepreneurs across Texas and the U.S. still face systemic barriers, limited access to venture capital, mentorship, and visibility. Yet against the odds, they continue to lead with innovation, creativity, and determination.
Did you know that Israel was the first country to successfully commercialize the USB flash drives? Yes. Well, in 1999, an Israeli company created a device that changed the way we store and transfer data. Pretty incredible, right? Do you know the name of the company? The answer to this question will be shared with you at the end of the program. So I wanted to begin today with our first guest ever. And I have to say that Jesse Martinez was the most supportive person in this journey to LatinTech Pitch. He came up to us in 2022 when he got back from Silicon Valley after, spending a lot of time in high tech, letting us know about the Latinx Startup Alliance. And he mentioned that there is a problem in funding for Latino entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to VCs. We receive the least amount of money. And because of this problem, we decided we wanted to tackle on hands-on. Jesse had a lot of experience with startups, and so we began this journey. So he came back here to Houston and reached out to us, and this is sort of how this partnership got started. Currently, Latinx Startup Alliance has over 1,000 members globally, and so I would love for you guys to hear from our guest, Jesse, who will share a lot more about his journey. Jesse, how are you doing today? And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, hello there, Priscilla. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be the first guest of the LatinTech Podcast series. So thank you again.
Yeah, of course. So tell me, so I always thought you were from the East End, El Barrio, but apparently you're from the North Side. So tell us more about where you're from, how did you grow up, and about, the impact that
Sure.
had,
Well,
place.
I'm happy to share. I'm actually from the other barrio, in North Side, and so just outside of downtown, which is really from U of H, Moody Park, all the way to 610. And so grew up there probably from first grade on. And, it was different times back then. But both of my parents came over from Mexico, in their teens. They met actually in the East End at Iglesia de Guadalupe.
Oh, wow.
And so I have strong ties there because I was baptized as a little kid there as well. And so, grew up, have one other sibling, younger brother. He's still in California, but moved back home in March of 2022 after spending 25 years in San Francisco. And so I'm a 4-time founder there in San Francisco, and that's where my journey started in tech, moving there in 1997. And then in that journey, starting Latino or Latinx Startup Alliance in 2011, 2012.
And why tech?
Why tech? Well, it's really because I accidentally fell into tech, so I feel very blessed that happened. So I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona in '96, and one weekend I was at the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and we still used to have them.
I think we still have them, not so many.
Reading the newspaper, and for whatever reason I went through the classified ads, and it was there that I saw an ad that said internet sales for an internet company. So I know you guys don't know this, but I faxed in my resume and cover letter, which is, how I found a few of my jobs, which is really funny. And so I faxed it in, got the call back, did my phone screens, and then they flew me out to San Jose to do in-person interviews. And so that's where my journey, my life, everything changed. And so I ended up becoming employee 27. The startup was funded by Sequoia Capital. We were one of two pioneers in the web hosting services space. So we were hosting Yahoo and Netscape in the early days. And from there, it took off like a rocket ship. So in less than a year, we went from startup to part of a public company via two acquisitions.
Incredible.
So we're on the path to IPO, but the founders decided to sell instead. And so that's where I learned about stock options, which I talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, they don't teach you about stock options in Texas. And so, and just, just to circle people, meeting other founders, supporting some of the, key companies, having key companies come in, from the early days. And, I remember having Friday afternoon barbecues, and you had Yahoo, Excite, Lycos, and Alta Vista all there. And so that was quite the scene.
So how did that lead you to eventually create the Latinx Startup Alliance?
Yeah, great question. So it was really just from a personal need. So it was the early days of other community organizations providing support and services for their founders. So early days of Black founders, Jewish founders, etc. And so I did a Google search. I was like, hey, I'm Latino, I'm in tech, I'm a founder. Let me see what's available for us. And with that Google search, Yahoo search, nothing came up. Nothing came up. And so, really left myself scratching my head like, well, how can this be if we're in the global hub of tech and innovation and there's no resources for Latino founders?
Right.
And so we started as a meetup group, 2012.
How many people were in the meetup group, and what did you guys do?
So the first meeting was 6 people in the Mission District of San Francisco.
Wow.
And so, so I tested it, right? So again, early validation. Hey, is there, talking to friends, hey, what do you think about this? And I got some early validation.
Mm-hmm.
So we did our first meetup and we had 6 people show up. And then from there, we did monthly gatherings and just had some key speakers from, the tech innovation ecosystem come by, right? Steve Blank, Eric Rees. I mean, there's a long list of just pioneers and OGs that participated in our work. And so it was really nice to have that support and also ensure that we were sharing our knowledge with others.
And would you say that during this time it was very challenging for different groups to come up and get the resources that were being provided by the organization as well?
Definitely, but we still face that same challenge, right?
Okay.
If we think about venture capital for Latinos, less than 2%, right around 2%.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Back in 23. And then when we think about Latina founders, right, it's just a fraction of a percentage. And so the challenge is still there, right? The struggle is still there. Now it's just a matter of, how do we empower more Latinos to become GPs so that they can raise their own funds? And then therefore, it's not a automatic, right? But it's more of an understanding, right, of the demographics and who you're supporting.
Of course. And so this journey eventually led you back to Houston. And as we know, Houston in particular has 44% of the Latino population, with all the challenges being faced. What brings you back to Houston, and also what opportunities out there for Houstonians, especially Latinos in this space, moving forward?
Yes, so I would say, well, we have big numbers, right? When we think about Latinos in Houston area and also in the state of Texas. And so what can we all do to come together to really support just entrepreneurship overall?
In general, yes.
Yeah, in general, right? So you don't have to be a startup founder. You can be a small business, et cetera. And then really it's just started with thinking about or being introduced to, hey, we're doing some tech in Houston. You should learn more about it. And I was like, are you sure? Because I didn't believe them. And so this was a delegation. So this was a Great Houston Partnership coming through San Francisco in fall of 2019. And
2019. Okay.
So I met them. So Bob Harvey and Susan Davenport recruited me along with my mom. They're like, hey, we're doing this tech thing. You should come check it out. There's this thing called the ION. And I was like, well, what's that? And they're like, well, come out and visit. So I came out in summer of 21 to visit my mom and visit Houston and go meet the team at ION. And that's where I'm like, oh, this is real. I can actually see it, touch it, right? and so, it's even, I guess, more heartfelt, right? It's an old Sears that we used to visit, or frequent, I should say, as little kids. So it's one of 3 Sears. So for me, it was just like full circle moment.
Yeah, it's an iconic place.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, wow, I remember coming here as a little kid. I even got my BMX bike there. So, so yes, it's special, right? It's a special
Mhm.
place, and I always tell everyone that it's a special place. And I used to buy popcorn on that lower level, and fast forward, that's where my office is, on that lower level. So now I just need to buy a
So
popcorn machine.
it's a full circle that we come back to.
It is, and so now I'm like, oh, I got to buy a popcorn machine and put it in my office. So
I actually have a popcorn addiction, so
it's my favorite snack.
popcorn there. So thank you for letting me know. Maybe in the future I'll come and check it out.
Yeah,
Um,
you guys will have to definitely come by.
yeah, definitely. So, how do you envision the Latinx Startup Alliance growing internationally and everything that you're doing in Houston? There's a lot of people who are working on that. I remember my first time going to the Ion. It's something that, Houston really needed.
Right.
And now that it's here, and I think you and I know this because we've seen how the first startup founders that applied for the competition, where they started, where they're at now, but also the caliber that the new Latino entrepreneurs are bringing to the table.
Yeah.
So, where do you see all of this coming together, and what does that mean for the future of the startup founders and just high tech and Latinos in general?
Yeah. Well, I think it's twofold, right? It's Houston area, Texas, U.S., and international. So more than twofold. Uh, how do we ensure that people know that we exist and that we have all the support to support these founders right here in Houston, Texas, and at Ion? And so, how do we help create and build that community over time, along with the capital and resources? So, I would say the biggest challenge to date is the same thing: it's capital. Where do we identify and find that pre-seed and seed capital to help support our founders? And it's a global challenge, but we need to do more about that here in Houston, because if we don't have that early capital, then they don't stay and they go somewhere else, or they don't do their startup right, and so they can only bootstrap it so much.
Right.
And so how do who's going to write those early checks of 25K, 50K, and so forth?
So once you identify the people that are able to provide that funding, how do you connect them with the startup founders? What does this process look like? And what are ways that others could be supporting this initiative and effort?
Right. Well, that first part is, has that founder or set of founders made that commitment to do a startup? Mm-hmm. So what do they do before, taking the plunge, yeah, right, and crossing over that line to do it full time, right? So that's a big commitment. It's a lot of work. And then, are they fully dedicated to seeing the realization of the work and the problems and the solutions that they want to provide? And so once they make that commitment, right, so they can take all the learnings, they can take courses, they can read books, they can meet people to give them guidance. Mm-hmm. And then once they do make that commitment, then what happens next? And so, do they have the right pitch deck? Do they have a big enough market? Right? Is it a global market, or is it just a localized solution? And mm-hmm. so through advisors and mentors, how do we support them on their journey?
And so I guess, is the startup business something like a sink or swim, or when do you know you're headed in the right direction as a startup founder? I mean, you've done 4 of them. I'm sure every experience has been different, but what advice would you give to those who are aspiring to be?
Yeah, I would say, my personal marker is that, does it wake you up
every day?
Every day. Are you thinking about that idea, the solution, or the problem you're trying to solve every day, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my personal gauge.
Well, and we know you don't sleep, so I know what keeps you up at night.
And so that's my gauge, and so and that's how you determine whether someone's investable or not, right? So it's the people, right? The founders. Then is it the market? Is the market big enough? And then are they really solving a problem? Right? Is the problem big enough?
And those questions are definitely addressed when we look at applications for our participants, which I think is something important to consider. So if people are trying to get engaged with you and the Latinx Startup Alliance, what are some ways in which they can do so? How can they reach out? What sort of events are there, things that they can do to engage and connect? And how can they continue supporting you in this process?
Yeah, no, thank you for the questions. The best way is to follow us on LinkedIn on Latinx Startup Alliance. We have a group of members of 1,000 plus. So we do a lot of posting there of tools and resources so that we're able to share. And then the other is just following us to learn about events at the ION, right? So we're super busy in the fall at the ION. So we have a lot of activities just because of Hispanic Heritage Month, and then especially with LatinTech Pitch, right, in September, and being able to make that call for applications.
Of course. So that's actually coming up soon. We're very excited. We'll be relaunching it again in September during Hispanic Heritage Month. Applications will be open to all of the Latino startup founders based out of Texas, not just Houston. We do get a lot of applications from Houston. Jesse, is there anything else you'd like to add to today? First of all, I want to thank you for the journey that you have come along with us on LatinTech Pitch. Your partnership has meant a lot to us here at the Consulate. And without you, I don't think we would have been on the third year running. So we greatly appreciate all of the support we get from you. But is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, well, I want to echo the same sentiment, right? It's, thank you so much for the opportunity to partner and support our Latino tech founders in the state of Texas, right? And so how do we continue that moving forward and ensuring that we do support them, not only with the capital, but, the tools, especially the mentors that's being provided through the program.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Don't miss your chance to pitch your idea. Apply for the 2025 edition of LatinTech Pitch happening this September in Houston. Find the link below. Until next time, keep innovating, keep building, and keep moving forward.